Hi, my name is Steve Elliott. I'm the head of Scaled Agile at Atlassian, and I'm excited to spend a little time with all of you today. The topic for today, I have this absurdly long title, but what I want to talk about is the shift from doing Agile, doing safe, doing DevOps to being value optimizers, being agents of change, being innovators, which is really what's front and center in front of all of us when we talk about digital transformation. We're really trying to drive change, deliver value. And I think too often we get tied up in doing the aspects of the framework or the method, and less about really focusing in on value. So I really want to talk about how can we do that? How can we build that into our conversations, our decisions, and how we work? But before we go deep there, I want to put this number in front of you. I've done this in a couple of talks this year, but I think it's a really interesting way to tee up this conversation. $7 trillion. What does that number represent? So something within our space recently that's $7 trillion. I'll let you think about it for a second. While you're thinking about it, I want to help you visualize it. So the picture there on the right is a cube, and that's $1 million in $1 bills. So a way to visualize $1 million is take $1 bills, stack them up for $1 million, lay it on its side. That's about 120 yards. So it's about like a football field with 2 end zones. Let's do that for $1 billion, because that's a huge jump from 1 million to 1 billion. You do that, you stack $1 bills, you lay them on your side. Now that's 60 miles. You got to get in your car and drive for roughly an hour to get to the end of it, to jump from 1 million, which is a football field, to 1 billion, which is driving in a car for an hour. To jump from 1 billion to 1 trillion is going to lap the planet 2 times. You're talking about a massive jump in $1 bills. It's wrapping the planet twice. When we throw out 7 trillion, obviously we're talking, it's actually more than that. It's going to be 14 to 15 laps around the earth in $1 bill. So just trying to help you visualize a trillion. So back to my question of what's $1 trillion. Oh, and before I go there, I can even take it one step further. The GDP of the world's largest countries, there's only 2 that have a gross domestic product where they produce more than 7 trillion a year. Just 2 countries on the whole planet. So 7.4 trillion is a phenomenal amount of money. And that is the amount of money. I was watching Mad Money one day, and I hear this from a CEO that I respect. He says, that's the amount of money that's going to be invested in digital transformation over the next 3 years. And that was said this summer. That was Bill McDermott on Mad Money. Whether he's off by $1 trillion or so, it really doesn't matter. The reason I wanted to bring that up is because digital transformation is massive. It is incredible how much money is going into it. And it is literally the biggest growth opportunity in our lifetimes across any space. Digital transformation is literally changing how all companies work, how they do business, and the upside and the downsides are huge. So this is just massive. But it really does represent the biggest opportunity for growth of anything in our lives. And we're right in the middle of it as technologists. Another way to think about this mind shift that needs to happen from doing a framework or doing Agile or doing this or that to driving value to being the value creators is how vital this is to success and how vital it is to innovation. I definitely like thinking about Elon, just because you think about the arc of his life and his career, you know, innovating payments, innovating cars, innovating, private space flight, all amazing things. And if you look at it, it all comes back to rapidly learning, failing fast, being as detailed with his plan as you can, but being able to pivot based off what you're learning. And so that's the other part of the mind shift, besides just being massive, is it's vital. It really is vital for improving the quality of life for the planet, right? We've got a lot in front of us. You know, the quality of life, regardless of what we all see on the news, has gone up for the planet pretty dramatically over the last 50 years, but we do have challenges in front of us with population growth and many other things we've got to be able to sustain. And I believe technology will be at the center of that. Another one I want to talk about is just disruption and the ability to go in and disrupt. And I wanted to bring up Disney Plus. This launched last November, I believe. But it was amazing. Like, coming out of nowhere, they do have a brand and technology to build upon, but 10 million subscribers in 1 week is amazing. And those kind of shifts were impossible before digital transformation. You just couldn't do that. You couldn't move markets that aggressively in a week. And I believe we'll see more and more of this with people innovating into other spaces. And so the other part I want in terms of mind shift is it's not just we're doing these frameworks, we're doing Agile. This is powerful stuff. This is the ability to really move markets, to really affect our businesses and try to affect them for the better, for change. And so this aspect of digital transformation, I just want everyone to take that it's massive, it's vital, it's very powerful when harnessed, what can be done. And then the last one is it's actually essential. It's not even an option anymore. I think about what we've all gone through with COVID recently and watching organizations react to that. And DOMINO'S was one where we've been watching them for a long time build up their mobile experience where you could watch exactly what was happening with your pie as it was being created. Really cool stuff. But because they've made all of those investments, the contactless delivery was a pretty easy shift for them. And it was more complicated as I learned more about it. They were actually shifting things in their supply chain around cardboard, lots of other aspects of it. So digital transformation, it's not just vital, it's not just powerful and a big opportunity for all of this, it's actually essential for survival. And I think it was really interesting to watch all of these different organizations react to COVID. And some of them still haven't really shifted anything and they're paying a massive price. And so that ability to adapt to your environment, adapt to change is essential. And doing that with technology is a lot more complicated, and that's really where digital transformation comes into play. So how do we do this? This is one of my favorite visualizations for thinking about what it takes. What does it really take to digitally transform? And I think it all goes back to a connected enterprise. Anything at scale, anything large, beyond a program or an art, you're going to start to run into these challenges of scale. And I believe there's four key components to make it work. The first one is a predictable delivery engine. We need a very technology wired capability to shift resources and build things and experiment and learn quickly with technology. And that's what a lot of Agile and Scaled Agile has been about over the years. And that's great. And a lot of times we get tied up in that. That's where a lot of the output measurement comes. But you've got to have that predictable delivery capability. And it doesn't mean we can predict what we'll be doing 3 quarters from now. It means we know that we can break work down, we can plan it across groups, and we can pretty predictably deliver a certain amount of work and learn on a certain number of experiments in a certain time frame, right? So that's the predictable delivery engine, and it's at scale still very complicated. The purple aspect is, okay, now we've got that. Now we need to change how we think. We need to think about planning and thinking in bets. How do we maximize for value? And we need to be able to learn really fast. And this really is a mind shift for how we think about backlogs, portfolio planning. That lean thinking and that thinking in bets has got to get wired into the DNA of how we go to market, so that as we learn, we can quickly halt, pivot, or persevere. We can unlearn bad patterns. And then on the orange bubble there, strategic adaptability is what comes from having both of these things and being able to point them directionally long-term towards a strategy. And this is where this is also not easy. Even if you have the ability to think in bets, being able to affect the whole strategy, be able to harness and move resources around as you need them at a macro level, not easy to do. So that's shifting how you look at strategy, how you look at your competitors and your markets, and how you take advantage of what you can do in those green and purple bubbles there. But what this really takes is high levels of transparency and communication, and we've got to be able to share the outcomes across the entire enterprise. So that's the connected enterprise. One of the things that we often talk about is that wall that pops up between technology and the business side. And really they're the same. Business people are technology people are business people. That's what needs to happen, but we really do have to get all of these folks into a highly transparent and visible way of working so that they can collaborate together and share those outcomes, as I mentioned before. To do that, we've got to have really fluid collaboration. So it requires high trust, lots of transparency. That's a lot of organizational change that's required. But we've got to have that, and we've got to have the systems underlying that to be able to get everyone across IT, across all of our different business functions, rowing together, rowing towards the same outcomes, sharing responsibility for the outcomes. If you can get that piece, now I think you've got something that's really, really unique and powerful in the enterprise. And really that's what all of this investment in frameworks and Agile and digital transformation, this is really what we're trying to get at, is how can we harness all of those resources and all of that investment towards maximum value. When we do it right, it kind of looks like as we shift strategies, as we change, budgets and things move around, as we shift our purposes and learn new things from competitors, our thinking on all that flows through the organization, all the way through to the teams doing the execution. And then as teams who are executing on work and running experiments learn, they're very transparent with what we're learning and what the trends are, and that flows up. And the shorter those feedback loops are and the wider that sharing is, the faster we learn. And again, not easy. Lots of work has to go into setting up that fluidity. And so I like to think of scaled Agile and enterprise agility and digital transformation kind of in 3D across 3 different vectors. So on my vertical axis, I want to be able to take Agile concepts and Agile thinking and lean thinking beyond just the execution layers, which is really where it started. We started with primarily with software teams doing Scrum and doing Lean is kind of where the Agile movement started. And it's a great place to start because it's one of the hardest things to get predictable with. But really for enterprise agility and for maximum value delivery, we need for that to go all the way up, that kind of thinking to go all the way up through all of the organization, all the way up to our leadership and all the way horizontally across every function. We all need to be thinking in bets. We all need to be thinking about the shared outcomes and how we're going to get there. And so as we think about the vertical piece, that's giving us strategic impact. And the further we can drive Agile concepts up vertically, the more strategic impact we can have with Agile, with digital transformation. Horizontal is going to give us more capability, right? If we can only do Agile concepts in IT, that's good. But just think if we could do it across the entire business, that's going to make things much more powerful. And it's going to give us the ability to learn not just in one part of our enterprise, across the enterprise. And then the third dimension that's always going to be at play here, this is not a flip a switch and now we've digitally transformed kind of situation. It is a journey, and I've been on this journey and I'm still on this journey as I'm assuming all of you are as well. I don't think anyone's crossed the finish line where we've done it. We're completely, mature vertically and horizontally across our enterprise. So I think it's a long journey, and we really have to think about it that way and plan for it. And plan for how are we going to get from, sit, crawl, walk, run, fly, however you choose to think about it, whatever framework you use for maturity or thinking about how you get to the end goal. But we need to think of it in that way. So maybe in the IT side, maybe we think we're up and running pretty well for our software teams, and we're just getting there with our service teams. And maybe for the rest of the business, we're still kind of doing it the way we've always done it. At least if we can assess that and know that, that's powerful. So I want you to think about that in 3D. And then everything we do in Agile enterprise is all about spinning this wheel as fast as we can. So Agile, Agile biz, dev, SecOps, whatever you want to call it. We want to be able to do that in a compliant, secure way as fast as we can. Spin that wheel as fast as we can with the unit of work being value delivery. We want to have some common unit of work. For a lot of folks, that's story points, especially in the IT side. But we want to be able to get those units of work out. And one of the keys that we often miss, and one of the points of this talk, is we want those units of work to always be tied back to outcomes. We want them to be tied back to our mission, vision, values. What outcomes and strategies are we trying to drive? And understanding how our work relates to that. That gives us purpose. That gives us the ability to try to move the needles that are actually going to drive the business in the direction we want. And so the key is to spin that as fast as we can in small batch sizes, small experiments, learn as fast as we can, and understand the value delivery, which means we have to be able to quantify value. We have to be able to quantify the value of delivery. And so there's a lot there, but I think this is the essence of really getting the value from Agile. It's not just, hey, we've launched some arts, we've got them going. It's that piece where you come back and say, okay, what needles are moving because of that work? What do we need to do next time to halt, pivot, or persevere? A lot of times we just jump into the next art, grab that next part of the backlog and keep cruising. And that is really hard to fall out of that pattern because it takes a mind shift and a lot of work. But driving outcomes, looking for leading indicators, driving all of that into the process is absolutely key for value delivery. And to do it, I'm not trying to minimize how hard this is. So it's going to take a lot of culture change. It's going to take a lot of trust, transparency, and visibility. Systems have to be in place to be able to wire your environment to be able to do this from end to end. So let's say you've done that. Let's say you've invested, you've done a lot of the mind shift work. You feel like you're on the right track. But one big problem that continues to come up that I hear about is we're doing work, but those needles we want to move still aren't moving, right? So we're doing work, it's more predictable, it's in arts, we're doing dependency planning across groups and teams better, but we're still not delivering those business outcomes. We still don't understand exactly how the work we're doing is actually affecting the outcomes. How do we deal with that? So a few things to just, it's hard to diagnose all of that in a quick 20-minute talk, but a few things to think about on are you on the right track or wrong track? If you think about what you've done so far with your Scaled Agile initiative as it's a place where we maintain backlogs and data. It's a system for us to plan across programs. That's good. But if it hasn't become your decision-making platform for your company and how the company comes together and makes big decisions based off the data you're learning from the prior art, I think that's a symptom of something to look at, right? So a true decision-making platform should evolve versus just a system for maintaining work. The second thing I would think of is are we still project focused? And I know you may not be using the word project as much, but are you thinking in longer term value streams? Are you really reserving teams and resources and letting them run and maximize value with what they have? Or are we still project focused where we're still working in those types of temporary containers? I still see a lot of both, or a mix of both. Something else to assess, just if your needles aren't really moving, even though you feel like you're getting better with Scaled Agile, I think that's something else to investigate. Are you executing to a plan, or are you really driving business agility? And this one, I would reflect back to those three bubbles in terms of business agility. Is the work we're doing, in the predictable bubbles, are we actually looking at the bets and understanding what's working, what's not working? And then are we driving those bets attached to a long-term strategy to really drive long-term strategic advantage, right? And those are different things. We could be doing really good with the first bubble and missing it on the second two, which is something that we see a lot. So just trying to give you some food for thought for thinking about how you can move from we're doing Agile to we're delivering value, right? So just something to leave you with, just to go one level deeper. This is a quick reality check. So some of the questions you may want to think about or ask, I kind of think about when I talk to senior executives in these four buckets. Value and investment. Do you have centralized intake? Do you have policies for understanding how you're going to fund value, right? Is it flexible? Is it pliable? How do you determine your economic thresholds? How do you set up your investment mix across your portfolio? How are you thinking about keep the lights on versus grow the business versus future innovation? You can ask a few key questions in there and start to understand pretty quickly if we've made the shift to a true enterprise agility or business agility type of mindset. And so there's some other stuff here that I can leave you with. These are just questions that I use to kind of jump in and think about those things across, leadership being bought into the change. Are our visions across products and teams, are they actually aligned towards some common goals? There's a lot of things you can probe into and very quickly start to figure out how are we doing, just as a temperature check. So I'll leave you with 4 keys to success. And I believe these still hold up. I've been talking about these for a long time. I do believe in them. I still see, even within organizations I work in, how hard these are. But we still have to empower teams. I think one nuance here is we have to empower not just the execution teams, not just, Agile software teams. We need to empower all teams, horizontally and vertically. The empowerment comes with an ask and a cost, which is we have to be really transparent with the work and make all the work visible of what we're doing and how it ties back to the outcomes we're trying to drive. So we want empowerment, but it comes with some responsibility in a large organizational setting to be very open with what's working, what's not. So we can't protect something that's not working by trying to not talk about it, right? As an example. So that means all of our work has to get aligned to purpose. It has to be aligned back to an OKR or an outcome, really important. And then the last piece is just not looking at these problems as like, look, my part is I'm writing the APIs. The APIs worked great, so I'm good. It's not that. It's, hey, we've got this bigger goal we're trying to achieve. It's a business outcome we're trying to drive. The APIs are part of it, but even if I'm the person who writes the APIs, I'm in there trying to help solve that overall problem along with the business people, and vice versa. The APIs aren't just the responsibility of the person who actually writes the code. It's a team effort. It's a shared outcome. When we shift that thinking a bit across technology and business, magic starts to happen. So those are kind of 4 keys: empower the teams, make the work visible, align all of your work back to an outcome or a purpose, and drive shared outcomes regardless of what aspect of that solution you're delivering. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.